Every text, every search, every location. In today's world, surveillance is no longer occasional. It is constant. But to understand this big picture, we have to question ourselves. What is surveillance? Surveillance is the close, systematic observation of monitoring a person, place, or activity to gather information, manage behavior, or detect potential threats.
Good afternoon. Today we are here to discuss the growing issue in today's society, the ethicality of government surveillance. Governments argue surveillance keeps society safe, while critics argue that it reshapes the freedom itself.
With the rise of advanced data collection and monitoring systems, a new question emerges. What is the relationship between government surveillance powers and unequal law enforcement of data privacy regulations, and how does that impact the distribution of socioeconomic status?
In other words, we are examining how surveillance is used differently across different communities and how it plays a role in social and economic inequality.
To understand surveillance in modern terms, we first need to understand what big data is. Big data refers to a data environment that contains massive amounts of complex information that traditional data processing software cannot analyze efficiently, thus leading to big data technologies that drive the integration and sharing of records across institutions. This has allowed surveillance to become more powerful and widespread than ever before.
Now let's go into the causes of surveillance. While surveillance has certainly increased, it is not new and can be traced all the way back to the early 16th century. As scholars Gilman and Green explain, surveillance is a requisite of participating in today's world, that is routine of daily society. In other words, it is almost impossible to avoid being monitored in modern society.
Now I'll go into a prime example of government surveillance, which is Operation Laser. Operation Laser, which translates to LA's Strategic Extraction and Restoration, started in 2011. This program collected data to identify laser zones for crime and individuals considered high risk for violent crime. However, this type of policing was deemed controversial and discontinued in 2019. This program assigned risk scores to individuals depending on factors such as previous crime and police contact, leading to racial profiling and excessive policing of already marginalized populations.
While surveillance may promise security, but without accountability, it can lead to numerous consequences of surveillance. Governments today have expanded surveillance by collecting massive amounts of personal data, using it for policing purposes, limiting access to information on the internet, and in some cases, for discriminatory purposes. Surveillance creates a powerful imbalance between the watcher and the watched. As Richard explains in his article, surveillance is not just a tool used for safety, but a system that is capable of shifting power and behavior, enabling risks like coercion, discrimination, blackmail, and selective enforcement of laws.
One major issue is stratified surveillance, where individuals are monitored according to their risk score. As a result, lower-income individuals are repeatedly targeted, thus contradicting the notion that algorithms are quote-unquote neutral. Police risk scores relate data-driven tools that quantify the likelihood of an individual to be a threat, creating risk areas that are then enforced with more surveillance. Another issue is a surveillance gap. As stated by Michelle Gilman and Rebecca Green in their publication on the surveillance gap, individuals who come from data-rich environments may find that they have a comparative advantage over those who grew up in data poverty. Data poverty limits access to healthcare, financial services, and education, meaning that surveillance not only monitors but also determines the access to opportunity. This surveillance gap serves as a social control mechanism that shapes power relations and maintains boundaries to oppressed populations by exerting influence, causing excessively surveillance individuals to avoid systems that have digital trace out of fear. Overall, this creates a feedback loop where quantified practices may exacerbate inequalities in patterns and create statistics that would fulfill and justify stereotypes.
Additionally, some enforced laws involve excessive and unfair punishment despite the goal to enforce surveillance, raising concerns on the ethics and justice system. This raises concerns whether the justice system and its punishments can be exploited. As stated in the scholarly article, even established democracies might decay.
Along with this, there is a correlation with lower income populations and excessive surveillance in comparison to wealthier individuals who are less surveillance and more protected by privacy laws. The imbalance in these laws lead to inequality enforcement instead of equality. Those excluded from data systems often become invisible in public policy, meaning that their opinions and needs are not often represented or addressed. Examples of largely marginalized and targeted populations include Black activists monitored during protests, Muslim communities surveyed after 9/11, Asian Americans targeted under initiatives like the China Initiative, and immigrants tracked under extensive data systems.
While government surveillance can discriminate against and overstep the boundaries of marginalized populations, surveillance can be legitimate if it is utilized to support national and public security.
Principles for better surveillance law can be summarized into 4 ways. First, public and private surveillance systems should be treated as interconnected. This allows for transparency that is essential to prevent abuse of power and protect civil liberties.
Second, secret surveillance programs should be prohibited. This enhances government accountability by upholding legal constitutional standards.
Third, mass surveillance without oversight should be rejected, as this preserves the democratic and fundamental rights of citizens and enhances government transparency. Oversight and surveillance is a pivotal prevention of unchecked expansion of government and corporate power, which indicates that monitoring technologies without the use of oversight can threaten and violate public security through the disproportionate targeting of marginalized communities and overstepping of legal boundaries. Surveillance programs need oversight to safeguard intellectual privacy and uphold freedom of association, First Amendment.
Lastly, surveillance itself should be recognized as a legal harm. This allows individuals to understand and challenge the violations of constitutional and privacy rights, reducing the risk of unfair profiling. In conclusion, government surveillance is not applied proportionally across society. While it is often justified as a tool used for safety and security, it can also reinforce inequality that comes from biased systems, unequal access to data, and targeting of marginalized groups.
Without greater implementation of oversight and transparency, surveillance systems risk worsening already existing socioeconomic disparities rather than protecting social equality.
That concludes all that we have today. I'm your reporter, Melinda Lim.
I'm your reporter, Caitlin Zhao.
Signing out.